The following video features excerpts taken from 5 recorded live lessons on landscape drawing with oil-based polychromos pencils. To learn how you can access this complete series, as well as the rest of our live lessons, courses, ebooks, lesson plans, and much, much more, visit thevirtualinstructor.com/members. We're going to be working on Stonehenge paper here, and I know I'm zoomed in really close. Let's see if we can zoom out just a little bit. There we go. So you can see the pad. Now this pad is a 10 7/8 by 14 inch pad. So it's a relatively large pad, and it's got several of their colors in there: warm white, natural, cream, fawn, and pearl gray. Now those names might give you a little bit of a hint that there's not a huge difference between the colors of the paper. So if I flip through here, it's not a huge difference. They're all relatively light. Compared to another surface that I like to use, like Canson Mitance paper. But this paper is 100% cotton, and what that means is it's going to make it a lot more softer, and actually the tooth of the paper is going to play a little bit of a role in the application. So I'm just going to look at the negative space that's happening on the side, and kind of just get an idea of where this element comes down. The tree is what I mean when I say this element. And then all right, I think this is probably enough information about the tree here. Let's go ahead and just decide where our horizon line is going to be. And basically, when I'm talking about the horizon line, I'm just talking about these trees off in the distance. Now, what I'm going to do here is we've kind of mapped out where the larger branches are going to be. So I'm going to avoid them when I'm putting in the sky here. And again, if this looks very, very light, it should be. It should be light. And some of these colors are not really going to stand out until we've got darker values in front of it. So we're basically just defining the lighter clouds that happen back there in the distance by making some of the colors around it a little bit more intense, a little bit darker in value. Okay, so I'm just kind of lightly applying this cool gray all the way across the tree line, this distant tree line back here. And the reason why I'm starting with the gray here, and let me just be very, very clear on something. I get a lot of questions sometimes about people asking, how did you know to use this color, or how do you know when you put this color down this is going to happen? And some of it is understanding color theory, of course, but not all of it. Sometimes you don't necessarily totally know what's going to happen. You have a good idea. You can make an educated guess as to how the colors are going to behave, but you never know for sure until you put it into action. So the reason why I'm putting the cool gray down is because I want these colors in the distance to be muted a little bit. I want them to be less intense. And of course, down close to the bottom of the tree line, things are going to be a little bit darker because less light gets down through there. Okay, now you can also see that I'm leaving a few bits here and there for maybe some lighter areas of value too. Here and there, right there as well. So, now we've got, this is the fourth color we're adding, and we've still got quite a ways to go here as far as building up the depth. So, there's no magic here really. A lot of folks think, they see a finished drawing and they maybe attempt to do it themselves, and they only put a couple of applications of colored pencil on the surface, and they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like that. I can't do this. And then they stop, and you just have to put lots and lots of applications. All right. So, our light source, of course, is coming from above, but it's also primarily coming from the upper left, which means the shadows are going to exist mostly on the right side of the objects, the trees and things. And while my pencil is sharp, I'm going to pull up a few indications of some trees way off in the distance that have already lost all their leaves. And then we'll go back and make some of the values darker. And since the grass kind of flows, well, we're kind of mimicking the horizon as we're making the marks here. That's why the marks we're making them horizontal instead of, sometimes we get so wrapped up in trying to draw all these little tiny details when it's really just about masses and shapes of color and value and the positioning of those colors and values. And I also want to make sure that the detail that is included here, in other words, the smaller branches that I'm pulling out, are not less detailed than what we're seeing over here, because these trees would be further away. And this is primarily done, again, just so that the areas where the leaves overlap the trunk of the tree, they don't get lost there. One thing I do want to be careful of and make sure that I fix at some point is the halo effect here. Sometimes with colored pencils, when you're working, you're avoiding areas and you don't always bring the color all the way up to the edge. So you can see here there's a little bit of a white edge, a little bit of a white edge there too, and even down here in the grass. So we'll need to clean that up before we move on. And you don't have to draw every branch like it's growing out from the tree, or you don't have to understand it completely. If you see a mark in your reference that is kind of going at an odd angle, then don't ignore it, include it. All right, so we'll just fill in a few of these areas here just with kind of a medium application. You can see the difference here. This tree, we've done probably 2 or 3 applications of the walnut brown, and then the dark indigo and a little bit of gray. Just walnut brown here with a pretty heavy application, and you can still see how light it is. All right, and in this case, instead of kind of flowing with the tree trunk, I'm going to bring lines up mostly that are straight and just change the direction of them. So I'm not, hopefully that makes sense. In other words, I'm not curving the line as I go up. I'm trying to make more rigid marks, which will also help it appear more like a natural tree. It seems like most of the time trees bend and change direction at kind of more rigid angles. Not always the case, as we have a nice little exaggerated bend right there, but that happened. And I'm not going to get too obsessed like we've talked about in the past of getting everything absolutely perfect. I'm just going to look at basic shapes and just pick out a shape here and there. And you might notice if you look real hard at my drawing, you'll notice that even over here on this side, this isn't even close to being exactly what's happening in the photo reference. I did do some changes here to make it work for the layout that I've created. Complementary scheme. So, a lot of times people are wondering how you can really use color theory in a drawing like this. And that's how you look for opportunities to pull colors out and basically exploit them based on their location on the color wheel. Wonky. All right, now a little bit of the burnt ochre. They're going to pull a little bit of the orange in here as well. And that's another thing. You might be thinking, hey, why are you using orange over there? There's a little bit of orange over here, actually. But also, it's not a bad idea to use many of the same colors in various locations throughout the piece, because it's going to create a greater sense of harmony and unity anyway. So we've got this same color has been used in the leaves at the top, the trees in the distance, the areas in the foreground as well. Same can be said about the greens, the various greens that we're using. And of course, most of the darker values around the side of the bank are going to start growing their way up this way because the light is actually coming through this way. And so this area back here is going to be pretty strongly in shadow. And I'm sure most of you know that already, but this area right here, working down here, just this area took probably about an hour. And that was probably about 30 minutes, maybe. I know you might be thinking, oh, that's a bigger area. Well, there were less colors to use. And I could repeat what I was doing fairly easily. I'm going to leave it alone for right now. We might come back to it. So if I zoom out and we look at it, you can kind of get a good idea of what it looks like. And I don't know if you can see it or not. Can you see the subtle blues that happen in there along with the warmer browns? Isn't that so much nicer than using a black? It just looks more natural, looks more realistic. In fact, we'll use this dark indigo underneath the rocks in a couple of areas just to kind of indicate maybe a little bit more of a shadow. That has a little bit of a bluer indication to it. There we go. All right, so we probably could bring some of these values up a little bit and make them a little bit darker and kind of help them transition to these lighter values. So we'll do this with the indigo blue. Of course, we don't want it to be perfectly straight across. We want it to kind of flow with the contours of the ground. And it needs to be consistent too, so I think it's going to work. So I just can't leave an area of the surface completely white. That kind of goes against a lot of the stuff I teach. So I'm going to go over the top of it with this light application here, and that's going to warm things up and make it feel a little bit more like that light is shining through. Oh yeah, like that. If you're ready to learn more about drawing and painting, then why not check out our comprehensive membership program, which includes video courses, live lessons, ebooks, lesson plans, and much, much more. To learn more about our program, just click on the button in the center of your screen or click on the card in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you so much for watching.